Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Maya Agan. I'm currently an intern at Park Hill United Methodist Church, and I'm so excited to have you all with me in week two of our wonderful session on the color purple and womanist theology. While I wait, I just want to say thank you all so much just for being a part of this. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook, that please feel free just to follow along, follow in the journals, follow the homework, and take time out of your day to really just dive into this wonderful subject that I'm truly passionate about, and I hope that you all will enjoy as well. So let me just start by getting into it. I'm going to pull up my slide real quick. Give me one moment. So for our second class coming up, we're going to be focusing on the Proverbs 31 woman, as well as one of my favorite characters in the book, Shug Avery. Now, Shug Avery is an amazing character, I think, that encompasses a lot of different women within inside the Black community and just social structure in general, and honestly is my personal favorite character in the entire series. So let's start out by what we learned last week and kind of dive into more what we really want to do when applying womanist theology in a practical setting. So what is womanist theology in practice? If you have not seen what womanist theology is in, please look at my former YouTube videos to really get a foundation of what we are talking about in this upcoming, because right now we're going to look at the practice or how you at home can implement womanist theology. I think a wonderful and important part of womanist theology is that it is just groundbreaking in the sense that it really has a duality of working in the political as well as the spiritual. It's as well a reflection encompassing of what Black womanhood is in that essence. So when we're looking at womanism, a great quote that also is created by Alice Walker is that womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender. So think of, if you have had any feminist thought or feminist classes, that we are in the same lens of empowering women, but we are also representing a specific type of person. I think it's funny that Alice Walker uses this quote because she later mentions on in the book, The Color Purple, why purple itself is important. But we'll get on to that in just a moment. So womanism in practice, I believe, is great when following Dolores S. Williams' 4 steps, which I'm going to go over. One of the wonderful articles that you can find is from Emily Townsend. She's currently the dean at Vanderbilt Divinity School, amazing author, amazing theologian, to really graduate from Union School of Theology, I believe, as well, but absolutely fantastic to kind of learn from in this stories and cases. So she highlights Dolores Williams' book, Womanist Theology, Christianity and Crisis article, Womanist Theology, Black Women's Voices. And in it, she has this 4-step system Dolores Williams has that really breaks down what we are doing when we're actually practicing womanist theology. So the first is multi-dialogical, and that sounds like a very complicated word, but I promise I'm going to break it down for you. Multi-dialogical kind of sounds what it sounds like, multi and then a dialogue, right? The first point and purpose of this is that you're going to have dialogue with people, an intentional dialogue that's going to be political, social, and outside of your own kind of thought community. Womanist theology in itself is something that people say that you have to claim to then enact. So not only are we claiming womanism, we're also claiming and Black woman identity. We're also claiming this dialogue with others that is a powerful statement inside of the theology circuit or realm, if you may say. So womanists also enter into a conversation where they believe or feel that there is a slow genocide of Black people, specifically when looking at the United States of America, is going to be the context of where we're looking at. And how is that reflected inside of this theological front if we are looking in that lens of this idea that Black people are in a state of threat. The second element is going to be liturgical intent. And then so it really focuses in more on the Black church when we're looking at the intent of liturgy, right? And how is the Black church in and of itself added to, maybe not genocide wouldn't be the right word in this situation, but the oppression, whether that be colorism, homophobia, sexism, just to name a few, and infuse it really to create a liturgy that proclaims justice. Finally, our third, the third that we're going to focus on is a didactic intent, which again, I know complicated words, but we're all going to get through this together and just have a nice time. The didactic intent is dealing with the moral life and the concerns of justice and the quality life and survival of Black people. And finally, the fourth element is a commitment to reason in female imagery and metaphorical language. Now, I know we're kind of at this point like, whoa, or at least the first time I was starting to dive into womanist theology really was, what are we even going into right now? So when we're saying that, what we're looking at is there is a sense within Black womanist theology that Black women are in an oppressive system, whether that be systematic, social, cultural, even in a theological sense when it comes to people enacting things from church communities such as the Black church, even the white church. And with that, how do we then reclaim, because again, we're womanists, we're reclaiming this and putting in that female imagery and that metaphorical language that usually would be put in for like a white male intent or just whiteness in general, and how can we reclaim and proclaim back that canon for what and who we really are and how we understand and think about things within this context. So that leads us to the practice that we are going to do for the next around 25 minutes. You will be able to do it at home. It is going to be simple. You can talk with your friends about it. People that you might not know, it's a great conversation starter, might be a little tricky, but it really is something that, because we are claiming this, that we need to enact. So I chose Proverbs 31 woman and Shug Avery. So the Proverbs 31 woman, especially inside the Black church or even social media or all around, it has become kind of a mainstay, not even martyr, if you will, but kind of the perfect ideal woman inside of this society, inside of society, biblically, even people's modern day standards. Now, it's questionable of what this really means for each woman. Contextually, there's a lot going on, but what I want to focus on today is how we apply these ideas of the Proverbs 31 woman to the character Shug Avery in the book, The Color Purple. So highlights of the Proverbs 31 woman is that she opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And finally, at the very end, it is highlighted that even for the most part, she's an acting thing, is that a woman, for Proverbs 31 woman, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Now, this last passage gets into a lot of dicey situations that are a little confusing, right? Is there charm in the previous passages about Proverbs 31 because she opens her mouth with wisdom, because she helps out the needy, because she works and brings in things necessary for the home that she is a part of? And what does that mean of beauty? Are we talking physical, mental, emotional? So these are all things that people have really honestly never resolved overall, depending on the theologian or the kind of denomination. You're going to see a lot of different things about who this woman actually is, which leads us to my wonderful, my favorite, Shug Avery. Now, Shug Avery is a character who in a lot of ways does and does not fit the Proverbs 31 woman mindset, right? So you could say that she fills the roles of mother, confidant, lover, sister, teacher, and friend. She refuses to allow herself to be dominated by anyone, though. And she does have a sexy style, sharp tongue, and many worldly experiences. I think the reason why I chose Proverbs 31 Woman and Shug Avery is that the similarities to them are a lot more common than people want to establish, right? Because when we think of Shug Avery is this character who goes around the entire United States / world, and she performs a lot of music and has sexual relationships with both men and women. We see that reflected in her and Seeley's relationship. She is not in marriage. She is owns her own life, has her own things, and really just goes off on her own adventures wherever she pleases and does not take no for an answer. Which then, if we go back to the Proverbs 31 woman, it gets a little confusing at that point, because this woman, this Proverbs 31 person that we're talking about, that a mother's talking about to her son, really is someone who has almost the same ideals, but inside of marriage. So although she is not being, from what we can tell from this passage, sexually promiscuous outside or running around the world, she is doing things out of her own ideology, out of her own thought, out of her own mind. And I think one of the things that I want to highlight, for example, if I was going to apply our womanist theology 4 steps into practice, would be to look at the relationship of Shug Avery to the Proverbs 31 woman in the moments of our second quote. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And Shug Avery's role as a confident lover and friend to the character Seeley. And the reason why I want to highlight those two in particular is because when you look at their relationship with one another, Shug Avery gives Seeley moments of kindness, which he's never had previously in a relationship with her, Seeley's current husband, Mr. Shug Avery does teaches her in softness and in care and in love. If you look, the song that I was playing before was called What About Love, which is based off of Shug Avery going off on her own, but saying goodbye to Seeley for the moment, and how they have this beautiful romantic connection with one another, and what that means when someone leaves, and how Shug has impacted Seeley's life for what we could consider, based off of the readings, for the better. And this kindness, that same kindness that you're going to see in the Proverbs 31 woman. So that's an example of a comparison of what we are looking for. Now, the part that we're going to get into, that I'm going to have you break out alone in a moment, is then how, if we know that Shug Avery and Proverbs 31 woman has a little bit of connection, how then do we apply our 4 steps, right? Like, how do we apply multi-dialogical? What has this got to do with liturgy? So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to pull up these 4 steps again, and I'm going to have you all, for the next 10 minutes, if you're sitting at home, to just take some time, take a breath, think about these 4 steps that I've listed before, bring out your Bible, bring out your color purple, and look at the relationship between Shug Avery and the Proverbs 31 woman, see what we can find, and then all together, I'm going to show you how to process these steps in womanist theology. There are no right or wrong answers, just have some fun. Hi, everyone. So I know it's only been about 5 minutes, but I wanted to really dive back into it because I didn't want to have you all miss anything at all. So what I have come up with is a system for you all to do what I consider a compare, a contrast, and a conclude, right? So we're going to first look, when we are looking at womanist theology, we're going to apply what I talked about before, but in a streamlined type of style. So we're going to look at Proverbs 31, but we're going to look at her from the womanist perspective first, right? So we're going to look of how has she influenced that multi-dialogical. So let me go back a few paces here. So we're going to look at that multi-dialogical step first, right? So how is the Proverbs 31 woman seen in your community, in someone else's community, outside an atheist community, but making sure that we are looking again within the Black community. Part of womanist theology is that it is a reflective and claiming. Again, I'm going to keep on using that word claiming because it also means that you have to claim and self-reflect. We're doing multi-dialogical. It also is going to be, how has this influenced me? What does that look like for me in my self-reflection? And then we're going to go into the liturgical intent. And this is specifically important when we're looking at the Proverbs 31 woman. So all of a sudden we have to look at what is the liturgy behind her? What are the sermons that we've seen specifically in the Black church? How has this been connected? What have we learned? What has gone a little uncomfortable, and what can we kind of grow from there, right? Follow that is our third step, which I consider the difficult part, is that didactic intent, right? That moral, what is the moral life, the concerns of justice, the quality of life that the Proverbs 31 woman would have been experiencing? What does that look like reflected inside the community? Because again, didactic, we're looking at those different social justice elements. And finally, how do we handle female imagery with inside of this? It's quite easy for the Proverbs 31 woman because we're talking about a lot of female imagery with inside of this character, well, side of this person inside of the text, right? So we're following those 4 steps. Then we're going to go back and we're going to look at Shug Avery from this womanist perspective, right? So we're going to go back once again. We're going to do these 4 steps again. I know it can seem tedious, but I promise as soon as you really get into kind of remembering these 4 steps, it's not, it will flow off the tongue quite easily. So again, multi-dialogical. What have you heard about Shug Avery from the community? What is the musical, the television, the movie said about Shug Avery? What does she look like liturgically? Has she been used in sermons before? This is not something outside of people's realms of doing bases of fictional characters with inside liturgy, or even the type of woman Shug Avery is. How's that been considered with inside the church? The didactic intent, what is the social justice that we see with Shug Avery? What has she done that has really pushed against the status quo? What has we seen that really has taken a new turn? And then finally, that female imagery. There is a lot of imagery of Shug Avery, whether that is the classic scene of her rising up from a bathtub, as well as her being beautifully dark-skinned, and all those images, and how does that reflect with inside that female imagery and that commitment to reason of what her story will look like. So after this point, this is where the trickiness comes in. This is where the uncomfortable comes in, and this is where kind of the social cultural
taken as a black bitch.
Is you will have to conclude for yourself and for what else is going to be going on. This conclusion will be what is self-reflected by using those 4 steps. And honestly, what is a great tool of womanist theology is what comes from your own experience, especially the experiences of Black women. If you are an ally, it is reading and understanding Black women outside of these 2 characters and this context, and seeing how you can apply these steps to really not, when I say compare, contrast, and correlate, I do not mean pin one person up against each other, but see the dynamics and the differences of Black women and how beautiful and varying these social, that these people that we are. And also for Black women, it's really doing self-reflective of, well, what part of me is that Proverbs 31 woman? And what part of me is Shug Avery? And as well with those allies, it is again saying, what part of me am I correlated with these 2 women? If you are a male, it's still having those same little inclinations, because womanist theology is that place of saying, I am reflecting on who I am claiming what I am, and I'm doing this in the Black liberation lens. And how does that look with community? How does that look with oppression? How does that look with our social norms that we have created with inside the United States? And what can we do to further create new ideas and ideology? So for my homework for you all, I know we did work in class, but I'm going to ask for homework. This will not be due anytime. Do not worry, do not fret. This is just for you. Is I want you to journal a contrast and comparison of a historical event or historical figure and compare them to a biblical text in the lens of womanist theology. So again, I will post this Google slide up online so everyone can see, and you can look back on those 4 steps, as well as the wonderful article written by Emily Townsend to kind of play around with what how we apply womanist theology to our day-to-day life, and also how we reflect on theology within our own world. I know we've been talking about this, but theology in of itself sounds very scary when we're using, at least for me, when I started out in seminary, using larger words such as exegesis versus eisegesis. And for my goal, and for the goal of what I feel this purpose of this class and these sessions have been, is to really break down that theology just means that we're studying God. And how do you study God in a reflection of your own life? And the beauty of womanist theology is that this is a practical theology. It's a practical way of being able to study God. There is no like larger terms that you need to have, but you can have, because it is about experience, it's about self, and it's about self-identity. I am so grateful and just thankful for everyone who has looked at the videos, who has showed up, talked to me outside, called, emailed, everything. I am greatly appreciative. I really hope that you all finish the book, The Color Purple. It is a great story by an amazing Alice Walker, and just really dive into more of womanist theology, because it is a wonderful subject that really brings a lot of dimension into life. So again, just thank you all so much. Thank you for being there, and just have a wonderful